This dress used to be my go-to for being comfortable around the house during my pregnancy. I hacked an oversized t-shirt into a dress and I added a ruffle at the bottom because I thought it would make it look cute. But because I'm not pregnant or even thinking about it, this dress is now too big and floaty for me. So I want to make a little change to it today and turn it into something that I will wear again by simply adding an elastic to the waist. And I hope that this little fix will turn it into something that I will wear again. I'm going to start by putting the dress on inside out because it's easier for me to mark where I want my elastic to be. I want the dress to come in at my natural waist, so I'm going to mark the fabric over here. I also want the fabric to hang slightly over the elastic, so I'm going to lower this mark by about 2 inches. Now my dress is flat on the table. I can properly measure those 2 inches down from the original mark that I make. So I'm just going to grab my ruler and chalk for that. This is the final point where I want my elastic to go through. To make sure that it passes through the exact same point on the other side, I'm going to measure from the underarm seam up until this point and use that measurement to transfer it onto the other side and make another mark. This ruler is actually too small for me to now join my dots, so I'm just going to grab another ruler. This one should be big enough. Now I want to draw a line from my one mark on one seam to the other mark on the other seam. So I need to get this line perfectly straight because that's where I'm going to stitch my elastic through. And I have to do this for the front bodice as well as the back bodice. So the dress is now ready. I'm going to set this aside and I want to work out what is the length of elastic that I want. My waist measurement is 29.5 inches and I don't want the elastic to be just that exact size. I want it to be a little more snug. So I'm going to remove 1 inch from that measurement and cut a 28.5 inch length of elastic. Now I need to join the ends of my elastic so that I can attach it to the dress, but I don't want to overlap them like I normally do because I'm scared that this bulk might irritate my skin because it's going to be in direct contact. So I want to try something new to me today, which is joining these but adding some fabric or some bias binding to keep it in place. I have pulled this cream bias binding from my stash and I'm using a light color because I'm afraid that if I go for my dark colors like the black or navy blue that it might actually show on the right side of my dress. I'm cutting roughly 2 inches of bias binding, which should give me more than enough to be able to wrap my ends of the elastic. Before I attach the bias binding to the ends of my elastic, I actually want to make sure that the elastic is not twisted anywhere because otherwise I'm going to have a problem attaching it to my dress. This is actually a little fiddlier than what I expected, but I think that's due to me using a thinner elastic as well as a smaller piece of bias binding. The 2 inches I cut off is too much as well, so I'm going to trim a little bit off of that for now. Now I'm going to stick a pin through so that it will help me keep this elastic in place. This didn't go as smoothly as I was expecting it to be, so next time I use this technique, I will probably be using a larger piece of fabric or bias binding to wrap around the ends of the elastic. Now I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew a square over the bias binding as well as sew a cross right through. That should be enough to hold this all in place. To make sure that this is going to hold, I'm just going to pull a little bit on the stitches to see that they won't snap out of place, and it looks like they're holding pretty good. Now that this elastic is done, I want to attach it to my dress, but to attach it evenly to the dress, I'm going to quarter this elastic, and all that means is dividing this into 4 equal parts. Once I've done this with the elastic, I'm going to do the exact same thing for the dress, divide it into 4 equal parts. I'm not going to place some pins at my side seams because those are already indicating to me that they are one of my quarter points. If you are following along and this is the first time that you are going to be touching an elastic to a large area, it can become fiddly and the distance between each quarter point may actually be too long for you to control. So I would suggest halving those points as well. And what I mean by that is take 2 of your quarter points and join them together, and then once you squeeze the elastic, you will have the middle point between those 2 pins. pins. And now you can stick another pin in there and repeat the same for the other quarter points. You will eventually have 8 equal parts, and that will make it a lot easier for you to attach to whatever area you are going to attach your elastic to. Now I'm going to slip the elastic over my dress and join the quarter points of the elastic with the quarter points of the dress and pin those all in place. Now I'm ready to sew the elastic to my dress. To sew the elastic on, a zigzag stitch is best because it will allow my stitches to move my elastic. If I choose a straight stitch, there is a possibility that those stitches will snap because it doesn't allow a lot of movement. I want my zigzag stitch to cover most of the width of my 1/2 inch elastic, so I'm going to lengthen my width and I'm going to test it before actually applying it to my elastic. I tend to start sewing at one of my pinpoints because the fabric and elastic are already held together, so I don't have to worry about it. I am back stitching at the beginning to secure my stitches, and now I'm ready to pull on my elastic so it lays flat with my fabric. And to keep it all straight, I'm going to make sure that I'm sewing the elastic directly on top of the line that I drew earlier. And that's it. The elastic is now attached. I'm going to try on the dress and see how I feel about it. I just looked at myself in the mirror and it is not the complete transformation that I was hoping for. It definitely looks a lot better than what it was. I will definitely use it, but I think that the elastic isn't as tight as I would want it to be. So I know that next time, if I'm doing a transformation like this again, I will cut off even more off of the length of my elastic, not just 1 inch, maybe I'll remove 2 to 3 inches off. I also think that by lowering the point by 2 inches and adding the elastic there was a little bit too low. So next time I might just lower it 1 inch or 1.5 inches. But overall, I think I will be able now to wear this dress and I won't look like a sack of potatoes. Let me know if you try this out on one of your oversized pieces of clothing. That's it from me today. Bye for now.